All right, guys, welcome into another episode of New Pod here on notfest.com. As always, I'm Joshua Toomey. That is Rocoli. And this week we are joined by Aaron Pauley from Of Mice and Men. Aaron, how are we doing?
What's good? I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in there, man.
Yeah. That's nice.
All right. New Of Mice and Men record, Tether, out October 6th. You can pre-order now. And once again, man, you knocked it out of the park. I think, like I said last time we talked, some of Mice and Men, your mixing and mastering and everything else is incredible. And the album sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you. I almost get more stoked on that than like people liking the songs. When people like the songs, I'm stoked. But when people like the mix, I'm like really stoked.
Actually, that leads me into my first question is how, like, you guys, like, you self-produced it, you mixed it, you did all this stuff. Like, how does taking a producer or a producer that you hire out of that situation, how does it make it better for you guys?
I think it just sort of streamlines the process, really. We're a band that's always really heavily involved in all the production of our records. So whether there is somebody there to press a button and give creative input or not, for us was sort of, at least with Echo, it was born out of necessity. But for this, we just really wanted to continue the same creative process. We felt like we hit a good stride with Echo. So with Tether, we just kind of wanted to see if we could do it the same way. But instead of doing EPs, try and have a more, grand vision going into it.
Right on.
But this one, when I was listening to the record, I got it today. I was kind of going through it, and it was funny. Warpaint came on. I was like, "Well, this has to be a single." And then I looked at it. I was like, "Oh, this is the single." With the check at the beginning, was that an actual just in the studio check, or was that a artistic? I'm going to throw in a check here.
No, it was definitely a check. It was definitely making sure that the mic was working. But I think then after the fact, it was cool. So it was like, "Oh, leave it." And it's like, all right. Well, it's corny, but whatever.
Well, no, I mean,
I love it.
That to me reminded, like, almost threw it back to more of like a recording to tape kind of days. You know what I'm saying? Like, to where you would now you would almost like start with the actual riff and like, here's where I'm going to sing. So it kind of threw back and almost made it old school when I heard it.
Yeah, it's for me. It's like, it was just a level check. Same with that. Like that whole beginning scream part. That was just kind of improvised to make sure that it sounded good. To do the rest of it.
I like that sort of stuff though, because it almost sounds, it just kind of gives the listener a little bit of a peek kind of the, kind of what you're doing in the studio. It's like, because usually songs just like, they just kind of start when they start and all that. But it's like, I always think of like Korn when they have, I think it's Before Clown, stuff like that, where you just have like kind of just people fucking around in the studio kind of thing. Oh yeah. I always think that as the listener, I'm like, oh man, like, I'm privy to something that nobody should really be hearing.
Yeah, and I think it adds a bit of humanity to it,
I think that's kind of it. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. But I actually, you said a quote, and I was reading your bio, and you said a quote that I thought was really fucking rad. And I want to see if I can find it real quick, and I don't think I have it up here. Damn it. But it was like, was it the man who loves walking will go further than the man who loves the destination?
Yeah, I heard that somewhere. It was a quote
that blew my mind when I read it.
Yeah, the man who loves walking will walk further than the man who loves the destination. And I was like, damn, I don't remember where I heard it. I heard it a couple years back, but I was thinking about it, and I was like, that's a good one.
That's great.
Whoever came up with that one needs to start slapping their name on it and posting it all around the internet.
Right? That shit on a t-shirt.
Get some credit.
But I mean that quote alone, though. I mean, how do you kind of work that within the makings of this whole record?
For us, it was more like we work song by song, and so like we never really try to have this grand creative vision really until we're mostly finished, and then we're kind of just connecting the dots, But for us, like we really just try and make each song the best that it can be, and I think when we all have that same singular vision, it works cohesively. And I think because we want to do that instead of just arriving at what we think the song should be, we end up usually discovering places that we didn't really think the song could go, and it ends up being better.
Very cool. Very cool.
So you've released you'll be releasing 2 records this year. You did a Jamie's Elsewhere record, and now you've done an Of Mice and Men record, and they kind of came out pretty close to each other. Was there ever any talk about like, hey, maybe put this to 2024 or anything like that with the Jamie's Elsewhere record?
No, because it was the same label and the same management team, so everybody's in cahoots,
Right.
But no, the funny thing about that is like, the Jamie's record was finished in, I want to say August of last year, at least as far as the music side of things. And then the rest of everything is what takes a long time. And then the Mice record was finished in, I want to say April. So there's a lot of like preparation that goes into the releases, even just once the music is done. And then they both come out within like 2 weeks of each other. It's like, all right, cool.
Well, that's why I started seeing stuff about the Jamie's Elsewhere record, and then all of a sudden I see of Mice and Men single of Mice and Mingle. There you go.
Yeah, Mice and Mingle.
That's a totally different band.
A new dating app.
Yep.
Of Mice and Mingle.
That's where the money's at.
Yep, that's where the money's at.
It was just kind of crazy to kind of see all the music kind of coming out all at once. And I mean, this seems like the first Jamie's Elsewhere record in forever. So what was kind of your thought behind doing that? Is it just the fact that you have all this recording equipment and mastering and mixing at your fingertips, or was it actually like, guys, let's get the band back together?
Yeah, no, partially technology, because like we live hundreds of miles apart. They're based in Northern California and I'm based in Southern California now. No, originally we had talked about uniting for a 10-year anniversary show of our album that came out in 2010. So we're past that point now. And so the pandemic kind of put the kibosh on that. And then we just sort of started kicking around the idea of like, oh, what if we just like made a song? And we made a song, and then we're like, oh, what if we just kept doing it? And then once we had the EP, then we shopped it around, and Sharp Tone had interest in putting it out. And I love working with them with the Mice. So it seemed like the logical home.
Right. With it being this far into the Of Mice and Men, albums and career, I mean, how are you approaching Of Mice and Men records today that maybe you would have done differently years ago?
I think it goes back to, talking about that quote. I think just sort of keeping the MO about finding the exciting things that could be uncovered in your music rather than going into it with an idea of what it's supposed to be like. Because it's, you can get to a point where songwriting as a craft, you can have an idea of what you want to create song-wise and then write it, if you've done it enough times. It's sort of like building a birdhouse, I guess. But for us, it's sort of just uncovering the new ways of doing things, or instead of doing what we think might be predictable, doing
the connection here.
I think we lost Ro. Is he back?
Okay, I was going to say I lost you guys, so apologize for that.
I didn't lose anybody.
We were having a conversation.
Okay, I was like, is it on my?
I saw the whole thing.
Yeah, we were talking shit about you, Ro. I don't want to ruin it for you, but we were talking a lot mad shit.
It's another day in the
life. Since the last time you were on the show, you've worked with I know I even interviewed him, and I'm gonna butcher the name. Is it Kayzo or Kayzo? Kayzo, yeah. So I had Kayzo on the podcast talking about working with you and kind of bridging the gap between, EDM and metal and things like that. So just kind of talk a little bit about working with him and just kind of getting outside the realm of metal.
It's always cool. He pulls up his laptop and he starts making sounds that I don't really ever hear in music that I listen to. And he's
Right.
using a whole different suite of tools to basically try and accomplish the same thing, which is write something that's emotionally impactful and also heavy as balls.
Yeah,
so it's kind of cool,
Yeah, he had some guitars on the record, and I'm like, man, who played the guitars? He's like, oh, that's MIDI, that's a keyboard. And I was like, oh, I mean, they sounded great, they sounded real. I mean, for being a metalhead my whole life, I was like, oh, it sounds really good. And he's like, yeah, that's just a keyboard.
Yeah, I mean the tools that are available to musicians nowadays, like it's a whole different ball game, compared to even, I don't know, 5 years ago. And I feel like I have this interview like every year where I'm saying like, oh, technology is just in such a crazy place compared to X amount of years ago, but it exponentially, it makes working on music remotely super easy.
Oh yeah. 2 or 3 years ago, this interview would be a Skype interview that's choppy, and all of a sudden your voice speeds up, and then you're, well, I guess Ro did fly blank out there for a second. But I'm just saying, typically, technology in just this realm over the last few years has gone crazy. So yeah, I get it.
Oh yeah.
Good, Ro.
Oh no, I was going to ask about the album title. Just as far as Tether is concerned, like it's got a negative and a positive connotation. Like when you guys were going into this, kind of, where did the term, like where did it come from for you guys? Was it kind of coming from a place where you need to tether yourself to reality, or where you're just kind of tethered where you can't move?
Yeah, so we named the record Tether after the song, knowing that the song would not be a single, to draw attention to the song because we really believe in it.
Right,
so it's like, that's our way of being like, hey, maybe listen to that one. No, but the song itself is about offering yourself to your loved ones to be a tether to them during the storms of life. We can't really shelter the people we love from hardships, but we can make sure that we don't lose them to despair. Pardon me, to despair.
Right on. It's a fucking great.
To despair.
I think I jinxed the connection here. Once the album's out, you guys are going out on tour with Bullet for My Valentine, and obviously Knotfest alumni, Vended. What an insane tour! Obviously, Vended. I've watched them since one of their first shows at Knotfest Iowa, up to now at Louder Than Life last year. I mean, they've kind of became like an incredible band in front of our eyes. And then obviously Bullet for My Valentine, you can never go wrong there, man. So talk about what just an amazing package that's going to be.
Oh, that's going to be sick. There's going to be some pits, eh?
Yeah.
A couple of pits.
Only just a couple.
Just a two or three,
Absolutely.
Actually, when it comes to touring with certain bands, like you guys toured with like Linkin Park and what's it called, like Asking and Bring Me the Horizon. Did you guys, especially with Linkin Park, like did you guys get any backlash, like touring with a band like that, or did it just kind of crack open for you guys?
No, it was amazing, and their fans were super receptive, and that
Nice.
that tour definitely changed the trajectory of our career. And that band, I mean, just them as individuals taking an interest in us as people and us as a band, and making sure we understand the business side of things and the longevity side of things, and to still have fun, because they still had just tons of fun when they were doing it.
Right.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Right on.
Well, this being new pod, and I gave you some homework kind of coming into it, and obviously, you're from Vacaville, so I'm assuming Papa Roach probably going to be in this list. But
on the list.
Let's go with your top 5. We'll kind of go album by album, and then kind of discuss why they're there.
All right, so top 5 for me is a tie. And what's funny is I actually so I went in. So not only did I make my list, but I got the album years.
Okay, nice.
For me,
all right.
I think for me, my new metal experience apparently is defined by 2000 and 2001. For me, I was in 8th grade, and that is just like, this was just like if I had a CD book, which I did, I had a little 5 CD book. These were the CDs that were in there.
Okay.
So it's just a very real list. All right. So for me, number 5 is actually a tie. So it's technically 2 of them.
Okay.
That was my way of sneaking more of them in. So for 5, Limp Bizkit, Chocolate Starfish, and Slipknot, Iowa. Those 2 for me are tied at number 5.
God, could you imagine being in 8th grade and like getting Iowa and Chocolate Starfish? That's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Because I think 2000 I would have been 19 and 20. So I mean, I'm not too much older than you, but I'm just saying like my 8th grade, I was listening to Metallica Black Album as the shows, but and I guess it shows that we never grow up. But yeah, I mean, I can imagine being an 8th grader getting Iowa. That's crazy.
I mean, not for nothing. I mean, you guys, I'm older than both of you guys, but it's like I was 26 when Iowa came out. So it's like I remember hearing that just when I was working at Roadrunner, and just all of us just like, what are we experiencing? Like to imagine my 8th grade self getting Iowa, I think I think my head would have literally exploded.
Oh, it was so next level,
scraping me off of the fucking walls.
It was so next level.
Yeah,
and obviously can't go wrong with Limp Bizkit.
No. And that's just another classic. And for me, I think I started listening to Iowa when it dropped, but Limp Bizkit came out a few months before that. I think it was like 6 or 7 months before that, maybe. But it was like, yeah, these were the soundtracks. These were these CDs were the soundtrack of like our days after school at the skate park.
Right.
Because we were just skate rats that hung out at the skate park.
Like
well, I just keep kicking over that Nalgene bottle. It sounds like I'm hitting like some sort of effect button.
Yeah, no, you should mic that. It sounds good. It sounds like you Slipknot like a
right.
Yeah, that was on purpose. That was actually production.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
so that's my number 5. Number 4 is a band called Pressure 4-5, and they had an album called Burning the Process. I thought it was a phenomenal record, and I think it's the only full length that they made, and I think they did a handful of touring in the early 2000s and then disbanded. But I just absolutely adore that record. I still listen to it all the time. And actually, a crazy story is the singer of that band. It's a guy named Adam. He ended up becoming vice principal at the rival high school in Vacaville.
Wow.
No kidding.
Like 20 years after, you know?
That's funny.
Crazy story with me with Pressure 4-5 is when I think their bass player was named Lyle. And when he left the band, it was like on the PRP. And this was, I think, before I joined Primer 55. So like I reached out to the guy that runs the PRP Wookubus and said, hey, you know, I don't know if they posted like, you know, we're holding bass auditions or whatever, but I actually talked to Lyle about getting an audition for Pressure 4-5. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a record worth checking out, though. I haven't listened to that record in years because I think the only time I saw them was that one Ozfest they did. And like you said, like kind of after that, it all kind of dissipated for them. And then
they should have got me in the band, then we'd have been huge.
There you go. We'd be talking about the Pressure 4-5 and of Mice tour. That's what we're at right now.
Nice. All right, man. Number 3.
Number 3 for me is Mudvayne LD50.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just that was another mind blower. You know, Iowa was a mind blower, and Mudvayne was, because it's like, you know, this might be a hot take, but Iowa was really heavy, but Mudvayne was a whole different kind of pissed off that reminded me of just I don't know, you know. And for me too, it's a really bass forward record.
Right. Very
actually,
Ryan Martini's bass playings.
When did you pick up bass at this point? Were you playing bass yet at this point, or
I was playing guitar.
Okay. And
to me, in my young adolescent brain, guitar and bass were the same thing, just with less strings.
Right. So, did you encounter both Slipknot's Iowa and Mudvayne around the same time, or did one come before or after the other?
It was honestly, it was watching MTV2 and MTV, and I think before it was Fuse, it was called Much Music.
Yeah,
and
Canada.
I think between 2000 and 2001, I hit all of these just in chronological order.
Nice.
Because whatever would just drop on Headbangers Ball.
Yeah, I can see that.
Dude, it's so hard to remember back then.
Yeah, I can't remember what the metal show was on Fuse though.
Yeah,
it's escaping me. But yeah, that I was just kind of curious about that because so much of that stuff happened all at the same time. So I never know if somebody, you know, because if somebody heard Mudvayne first and then they were like, "Oh, Slipknot just sounds like Mudvayne," it's kind of like, well, depends on when you kind of heard it, you know? Yeah.
No, I'd already been exposed to the self-titled record before.
The Fuse metal show was Uranium, wasn't it?
Uranium.
Yeah.
What's her name? Mistress something. Julia.
Julia. Yep.
Dude, what a time! What a time to be alive.
Yeah, seriously.
All right, number 2.
Yeah, what's number 2?
Papa Roach Infest.
All right.
Because it's just, I don't know. That's the soundtrack to my childhood. And then
well, hang on, before we dive into that one, let's stop at the Papa Roach there. I mean, obviously, you grew up in Vacaville.
Oh yeah.
And I know the name Vacaville from Papa Roach. I mean, so when I first saw that years ago interviewing you, so I mean, kind of talk about seeing a band kind of from your town becoming, what Papa Roach became.
Right.
Oh yeah. That's the first time I think, I understood that people from where I was from could impact the world, and not just necessarily in like a fame and notoriety way, because I mean they blew up and they blew up fast, but just in like I can create something and it can resonate with somebody.
Yeah.
Because long before that song was on not too long. It wasn't really too long, but it was like, before that song was on the radio, they were playing that at Three Oaks, which was the venue right next door to the skate park. And it resonated with everybody from the town, and I think seeing that can, the world becomes a much smaller place and a much larger place at the same time. And I don't know if that makes any sense. So I'm gonna stop talking.
Were you seeing them around town at all? Did like Jacoby work at a gas station or something that you saw or anything like that?
Yeah, so I grew up with Jacoby's younger brother. We went to like our families went to like the same church, and we were in the same youth group and lived close by. And then I remember my mom, she worked at a bridal store, and she did Jerry's wedding tux, I think. So I remember he signed a CD and left it there.
Nice.
And I still have that CD.
No, I don't. No, I don't have
it. You sold it at the Book and Music Exchange or whatever when you needed money at some point.
Yeah. Huh.
What your number one is?
So my number one is Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park.
Nice.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean,
the songwriting is just. I think for me, it's funny because I made a bunch of different lists, and for me, it came down between whether or not I was going for heavy bangers, if it was going to be like Cold Chamber or maybe System or early Deftones, or then I was thinking, like the more artistic side, like maybe like early Incubus or even 311, that self-titled record.
Right.
You can kind of call that new metal.
Yeah,
it's pretty new.
Yeah.
But no, for me, I think Linkin Park was my number one just because the songwriting was there was just a depth to their songwriting that I don't think anybody else in the genre had like touched on, I think. Not just like sonically, but emotionally,
Right. Well, especially like you said, like getting introduced to all this stuff when you're in like 8th, 9th grade, like especially 2000, 2001, it was kind of a nonstop,
it
was like Slipknot, Static System, Linkin Park.
Music was sick.
It was just like
thinking back to releases, dude, it was sick, man.
Yeah. It's like that's especially like one of those like what a time to be alive and what a time to be a kid kind of thing, to be able, especially if you're in 8th grade and shit's just whatever, parents and school and all that. And then it's like you just get hit with like, Hybrid Theory, you get hit with, Static X, you get hit with Iowa, God.
Toxicity. I remember Toxicity came out. I remember Disturbed came out.
Right.
Static X came out. Dude, there were so many.
Yeah, right. It was so over the top. But I mean, like I was running street teams back then. So that's when, street teaming became this big thing as well. So it's just like everybody was just inundated with so much music that it's, I mean, your list makes total sense for like,
oh dude. Yeah.
How old you were and everything. I mean, I think it's a perfect list. It's really, really good. And throwing in that Pressure 4-5, I think is really good because I think that is a record that is kind of like one of those weird hidden gems that people just.
Oh, I think it's funny because I think a handful of those songs still hold up. Like I could imagine hearing those on Octane,
right
nowadays.
No, totally.
So with the Linkin Park, obviously getting to tour with them years later, I mean, was the 8th grader in you freaking out that they took you guys out, or when you got the call saying, "Hey, we're going on tour with Linkin Park"? I mean, how did you react to that?
Yeah. Oh, that was definitely like a holy shit moment. And at the same time, it was sort of I don't know. I guess it was sort of like a full circle moment in, you know, at that point we'd done some shows with Papa Roach and stuff, and at that point we're friends and we're comrades, and the scale though at which Linkin Park's music affects people, and just seeing how massive the touring operation is. It's like you can look at it sort of from like a notoriety standpoint or whatever, and think like, oh man, this band's massive. But it's like, what that actually means is that those songs impact that many people,
right?
That people will invest their time and energy to buy a ticket to a show, and not just a ticket, but to sell out 2 nights back to back at the London O2 Arena.
Right.
It's like, over 20,000 a night, both nights. It's like, it's really crazy because, the way that they always talked about how they wrote and what the importance of what they did and what they offered people was it was always sort of chasing the same thing. It's like finding the root of human connection, and then you can make some noise that reminds you of that. And it can allow you to connect with other people.
No, you definitely,
that's the point.
Yeah, you definitely hear that in of Mice and Men's music is that connection, So I think you guys really took that and really made it happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think if there's one thing I hope that we gleaned from that, it was that.
Well, I think the one thing too with Linkin Park, and over the years interviewing bands, they could be the heaviest of deathcore band up to like Bloody Wood and all these bands in between. I'm like, you get on that question of like what made you want to play music, and the name Linkin Park has came up so many times out of bands you would never even assume. You like the deathcore bands, they're like, oh, I got into music because of Linkin Park, and right. They were such a gateway band for so many kids. To kind of just pick up a guitar or scream.
Yeah, I think everything from the production to the riffs to the lyrics to the vocal delivery, it's just everything was exactly as it should have been, right. Especially for that time and place,
Right.
Like the thing too is like a lot of shit happened between the beginning of 2000 and the end of 2001, like
a couple things happened.
There was a lot of life that happened. So I think music was sort of a way of people, dealing with that.
Yeah.
No, that's
it was definitely like when with the PODs of the world and things like that, where you kind of, not to say that they capitalized on that, but I mean, when obviously 9/11 happens, we need something that we want to gleam onto that's maybe a little bit more positive. So you got Alive, and you got a lot, Youth of the Nation and all that stuff kind of coming at you too. So I mean, there were a couple bands in there that kind of took us away from the dark and the sadness, and it kind of helped us out in there. And I think Linkin Park 1 and POD was another one.
Oh yeah. They were honorable mention, dude. I was juggling like 15 CDs trying to fit them into 5 slots.
Right.
I was thinking about, honestly, everyone was going to be a tie, so I could fit 10 in. But now POD is another one.
Yeah.
Cheat on your homework.
Yeah. No, Southtown for me, and then Satellite, that record. And then you think about it, it's like music's a really it seems magical at times, and I think about how long it takes for a band to write songs and record them and then create an album, and then for those POD songs to drop on 9/11 when that happened.
Right.
When those were all months in the making, it's like, I think a lot of people in our world had music sort of on deck for the feelings that a lot of people were going to be feeling.
Right.
And it really resonated with just tons of people from all different walks of life,
Yeah, no, you're right though, because that whole week was just kind of crazy. I mean, between God Hates Us All and Nickelback, like everything just kind of hit one day where it's just like, it was the one day that everything changed and literally changed the trajectory of music, of how we consume music, of everything, So yeah, that's very true.
It's wild.
And one more thing on Linkin Park that Ro and I kind of talk about too is Linkin Park was the new thing so late in the game of nu metal to us, because we had gotten into first Korn album in 94 and kind of all the little rumblings of all her first Deftones album 95. So by the time Linkin Park comes out, and they're like, everybody's like, they're the next big thing, and we're like, this is kind of the end. I mean, like we're you know, like Kill Switch Engage is about to come out. You know what I'm saying? Like, like we're about to be moving on, and this band Linkin Park comes out and totally just blows everybody's mind.
Yeah. But I mean, their impact again on like your band and so many other bands, like what Josh was saying about like just a lot of these deathcore bands, you know, like Suicide Silence, you know, kind of bringing them up and whatnot. I'm always amazed at that particular band like had that kind of impact on what music is like today, you know, but that they still like influence such different kinds of extreme music, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, I can hear it in your new record, you know, little bits and pieces, but it's like,
for sure. Oh, it's definitely in there.
Yeah. It's like, you'd never really be like, oh, Mice Men, huge Linkin Park fans, you know, like it's just, it doesn't almost seem like it equates, but it really does. And you can really, really hear it. And I think it's fucking really, really good shit, man.
Fuck yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. I think we need to make this the top 6 because you're now the second guest to have a tie. So
yeah,
but I'm assuming if I make it
or
top
even
6,
a top 10.
Yeah,
top
we might
10?
have to do
Dude, there's a lot of new metal first off, and there's a lot of good records. There's a lot of bad records too, but there's a lot of good records.
Well, that's the one thing too is the term.
We should do a top 10 great records and a top 10 shit records.
Oh yeah,
you know, just for comparison's sake, you know. Because
it'd be a lot of debut albums and a lot of like third albums.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
It would just be interesting that it would just be like, you know, what one person thinks is like number one on their like top list could be like number one on someone's shit list kind of thing. I would love to see kind of
and then we make them fight.
And then we make up.
No. In the spirit of enjoying things, I don't have a shit list, but that was just a joke.
Yeah.
No, I got you, man. What's crazy though is the term new metal encompasses so many types of bands because, like you said, you were talking about System of a Down or 311 or Deftones or Static X. You know, you've got so many different styles of bands, but they kind of all fall under the umbrella of new metal. So you can kind of go every which way with this one.
Right.
Yeah, and that made it hard. And they're not just thinking about just singles too, but albums.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Going deep cuts. I mean, shit, dude. Even Sugar Ray's record, their first record that
Lemonade and Brownies.
Yeah, that record, and then the one after that, Floored. Mm-hmm. Floored is a new metal record. Every other song on there except for Fly is like a new metal song.
Right.
I'm right there with you, man. When that first
love that record. I
think before Floored came out, I had Lemonade and Brownies, and they were right there, like Korn, Limp Bizkit, you know, like they Sugar Ray. It was all like, you know, they were in the group, and then all of a sudden, you know, Fly comes out and they're off to the races.
And they were in the private jet.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, and Mark McGrath's now out touring with Bret Michaels. So,
jeez, what a song though.
Right.
It was good stuff, man. Well, Aaron, Pauley, it is always a pleasure to speak with you. And,
yeah, likewise.
And
thank you for coming on, dude. Very much appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Cool,
man. So new of Mice and Men record Tether out October 6th, and the new Jamie's Elsewhere record Paradise is already out. So make sure to check out both of those releases because Aaron is going to be everywhere in 2023.
Everywhere.
So make sure to check them out. Bullet for My Valentine tour coming up. All kinds of great stuff. Pre-order now. Tether, all that. And once again, Aaron, Pauley, man, always a pleasure.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
No problem, man. Have a good one, dude.
All righty. Take it easy.
See ya.